thought they were pulling those tubes out. Got a rock, break.
Hey, David. We're ready to 160. Hey everybody. Like, let's just get a quick count real quick. And then I'm gonna have you sign stuff like a sheet later. Maybe I'll just get like an exit sheet. Because I know like Dr. Armstrong and some of the 107 classes were offered extra credit for coming, so we'll just keep that as that'll be like the tally for that too. I have 30, including professors.
How many are you?
35.
35.
I'm very strict on that number.
Hey, Josh! You need to get Steve with the pie in the face.
I'm sure you can go and get some people in this computer.
No, they have to.
Stay down here for a second. Okay. 31.
No, they have to, it's in good faith, so they have to be there
I'm
first.
here in good faith.
No, I have to have good faith that you're in the presentation. Alright, if you make it through the presentation, I'll count you as one.
Do you still get pie?
It has to, we need 4 more if they come in at some point. It's good, sit down.
How long?
Until this is done.
You don't need to stay here if you need to go to work.
Yeah, go work, Josh. Go work. Let's on that.
I'm here in good faith still.
This is it. Oh, you're getting close.
Oh, Greg,
Where's
nice to see you.
Yes.
Oh,
We
oh.
need you back.
Where's the seniors walking in? Let's just,
They're late. They're seniors.
they're late,
Let's
yeah.
flip on.
Can I just get somebody from my computer lab?
You guys
Yeah,
are
just
just
raise
writing it
student
down.
play.
Yeah, it has to be
It's
good
like
faith.
me when I slept.
Oh, they're here in good faith.
They're for entertainment.
Alright, I'm going to start this up now. Alright. So, this is a resume workshop, obviously. Everyone knows that. But a resume is more than just a piece of paper that has some stuff on it. So, this workshop is a little bit more than just about how to build a good resume. It's about building your credibility as a computer scientist and as a student. So that when you go and apply places for internships or full jobs after graduation, you actually have some credibility as a developer, as an engineer, as a student. And that credibility, you don't just get that with your degree. I mean, you get credibility with your degree, but you get credibility by working through school and outside of class and extracurricularly, and building, and your resume will reflect that. So at the end of the workshop, we'll talk a little bit more about how you can build credibility. But the first part, we'll talk about what a resume is and how you can build one. So your resume is basically a summary of your selling points on a paper, and it also sort of implies this interest in a company. If I give you my resume, I have interest in your company, or else I wouldn't be giving you a resume just for the hell of it. Exactly. Hello. And so that's actually an important point to remember for a little bit later, that you do have an implied interest by giving someone your resume. And it's also a running tally of achievements for yourself. I think I went through like my freshman and sophomore year without a resume, and then I made one for an internship. And I sat there for like an hour, and I was like, all right, what have I done over the last 2 years? And trying to think of everything that you've done, all those competitions you participated in, how you did in those competitions, going through old email chats, trying to figure all this stuff out. It's sort of difficult to figure out 2 years after the fact. So imagine sitting down as a senior, and you're like, well, what have I done in the past 4 years? It can, you're probably gonna miss things that will actually, undersell you by not putting those things on or thinking about those things. So by keeping some type of master resume, you're actually gonna have this tally of achievements as you're going through school. this is something you can build up from your freshman year to your senior year. And I really recommend, like, if you're a freshman here, freshman or sophomore, building up this resume, even at that early stage in your, academic career, is really important. So obviously, starting early, it's easier to add the achievements as you get them rather than 4 years after the fact. Starting early informs where you're lacking and where you can improve. So let's say you have this resume and you know that in 6 months you want to apply for internships. So 6 months, that's enough time to get some stuff done. And so by looking at your resume, you can say, well, what do I need to do in the next 6 months to put myself in a more marketable position for this company? And so by building your resume early on, you have that ability to sort of, actually shape how that resume is going to look in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years. And you can build up to something. Instead of just doing things and going through your academic career here and then just tallying everything, you can actually work towards things. And the only way you're actually going to be able to do that is to be able to keep this goal list, like have a goal in mind and keep achievements that work towards that goal. And obviously creating this master resume that you can pull from, I talked about that a lot in the last slide. It's really important that you can pull from this master resume and not just try to think of things off the top of your head. And also, maybe you'll be out talking to someone, you go to an event or something and you just meet someone. That's how you meet people, just randomly. And they say, hey, give me your resume. So now you don't have a resume, but they want your resume. So you're going to make a crappy resume that night and send it to them. And it's not going to be good, and you're going to miss things, and nothing will probably come of that. So you should always be ready to give someone your resume, even if you're a sophomore. I mean, you can get internships as sophomores. I guess you could even get internships as freshmen. You should always have that resume to give out to somebody. So on the resume itself, there's a few minimum requirements that every resume should have, especially for computer science students. So you need, and I'll talk about these more in depth, and I'll talk about them for upperclassmen versus lowerclassmen because they're different at different stages in the game. But you need that past work, you need your education history, you need some sort of student involvement history. If you're, if it's your senior year and you haven't been involved in things, maybe you need to take the next semester to be heavily involved in some things to build that up. And building these things up from early, the student involvement is really good. Outstanding achievements. I like to say that the outstanding achievements you have should be either post-high school, so they should be from your college years on, or they should be like significant life achievements. Like if you're an Eagle Scout, or you have like your Gold Star Girl Scouts, you should put that on your resume, and that should be on your resume because that is a life achievement, and it represents a significant portion of development that you went through as a young person that's going to shape your future. But, perfect attendance, kindergarten through high school, probably shouldn't go on your resume because it doesn't really reflect you as a college student. And then your language and tech skills, obviously, you're a computer science student, you're looking for engineering positions, what can you actually do and what do you actually know? So looking at underclassmen, definitely need to highlight the classes that you've taken so far. Because, you might be a sophomore, you probably haven't had databases, probably haven't had web programming, you're missing a lot of things. And you need to be honest with employers about the things that you do know and you don't know. So don't try to, oversell yourself from an early part in your academic career. Because you'll get called out on it, and it will probably just not be fun in the end if you get put in something that you're just not ready for. So definitely be honest and clear about what you understand. But at the same time, don't undersell yourself, because it's not like you want to make this resume sound like you can't do anything, but it needs to just be honest and clear. And you should put all your jobs on. So, like, let's say you work at Giant Foods for 2 years. You should put that on your resume as an underclassman looking for internships. Because it shows that you have a work history, that you can, you know to show up on time to work and all that. But you'll see for upperclassmen, I definitely do not suggest putting that on your work history because it's just going to be extra noise. It doesn't really add any benefit, like that you were a grocery bagger for 4 years at Giant. It doesn't really tell much. But now, let's say you had tech jobs or you had management positions, you should definitely put those on your resume. You'll probably have more tech jobs as an upperclassman that you can put on, like maybe one internship or something that you can put on. Maybe you have some management positions that, and maybe you're working at Giant as a manager or something like that. That's important to put on because it shows that you're a leader and that you've been in that leadership position. And hopefully you'll have projects and extracurriculars to highlight that underclassmen just wouldn't have had the time to develop. And that's really important to highlight those extracurriculars and projects on your resume. And actually, I've heard recruiters tell me that they don't want to see your in-class projects on your resume because you had an incentive to do those projects. You got a grade for those projects. You were doing them because you had to. It's the stuff that you did outside of class, the stuff that you didn't have to do, the stuff that you did because you actually care about computer science. Those are the types of things that people want to see in a resume. And so if you don't have those things, like let's say you're a senior or a junior and you just don't have those things yet, you still have a little bit of time to get those. All right, Dr. Jordan.
One thing on the in-class projects, they are important from a standpoint of like keywords and what you have done. So even though there's stuff you're required to do, they will show that like you've worked with SQL, you've worked with Java. So when you're listing them, it's really a matter of keywords in it. But like Steve said, if you have nothing outside of that, so like, okay, great, you can do that, but is there anything else that sets you apart from anyone else we're looking at that's coming from other universities? They're going to be doing those exact same courses. They're going to be doing very similar projects and very similar keywords. That's sort of where it's getting at. Those things outside of class. If you do something in a software engineering team, something in a programming team, something in game dev, something from an outside project standpoint, that's where that one thing that can send you apart. But those in-class projects, basically where you're going to get a lot of your keywords and stuff to help get you in there. But those other projects are what are going to separate you and make the difference.
Because what those extra projects show, they show that you're passionate about what you're doing. They show that you enjoy doing this stuff outside of let's say school was your 9 to 5. These extra projects are things that you like to do outside of that 9 to 5. And companies like to see that because you're not going to be working at 9 to 5 all the time. You're going to be working 9 to 8 sometimes, or you're going to have extra stuff, and they like to see that you can handle that, that extra load and those extra projects that you can be passionate about. So aesthetics of your resume. So obviously your resume should be clean and easy to read. I think that goes without saying, but I just want to put that on there. But at the same time, there should be some type of design sense put into it. All right, and I'll show you on next the evolution of my personal resume over the course of the last 3 years. And you'll see that the first one didn't have much design sense put into it. And what it basically comes down to is that, let's say you're applying at an enterprise. This especially applies to an enterprise type thing, or a high demand job, like high demand startup or whatever. They're going to have 100, 200, 300 resumes that they're going to be looking at, and they're going to be flipping through. And within a second, they're going to say, do I want to read this resume or don't I want to read this resume, basically. And so you have to have something that wants to make them read your resume. You need to hook them within a second. And the only way to really do that is by having some type of visual appeal to your resume. And so it's actually really important. I've had some jobs like at hackathons and stuff talking to some recruiters, and they don't want resumes that are just plain, boring, black and white, traditional looking, got a template from Word type of resume. They just don't want to see those because it's like the resume is your selling point. It is like the things that you've done in the last 4 years on one piece of paper. And so you want that to look good. I mean, you don't want it to look like everyone else's. So you need to have that design sense put in there. Lots of margins for notes, because let's say you meet someone at a job fair or something, they might take your resume, and then once you leave, they might write down some notes about your resume. So you want to give them room to do that. Or notes about yourself or whatever they're going to write. And the one column, I actually had a 2 column, I'll show you in a second. I showed it to Briggs the other day, and he was like, this looks like crap. Yeah, because I personally like the 2 column because I felt like it separated me from the other people. But Briggs said it separated me in a bad way because the way that the eye reads the paper, it's going to be difficult for them to see what I want them to see in the way that I want them to see it. And you get that, you can sort of force that with the 1 column layout because of how your eye is going to read down the paper. And it's that type of thing where if they have 8 seconds to, you hooked them in that first second, you have 8 seconds to impress them, and then maybe if you impress them, you have another 10 seconds for them to actually read all the other stuff on your resume. So they're going to spend about 8 seconds looking at your resume, and their eye needs to quickly get the critical information that sets you apart from everyone else and that can impress them. So I'll show you real quick. All right. It's a little bit small here, but you can sort of just see the general flow of things, all right? I would call this a very traditional resume, all right? This was my first one as a sophomore. This got me my internship and everything. I mean, it's pretty good in the fact that it has all the critical things on there. Has some extracurricular software projects, although actually I actually revised this one this year. So this is pretty up to date.
Can you zoom in?
Yeah, it's sort of hard to look at. I guess, all right, so I'll just show you real quick. So you can see, and just some sort of criticisms about this resume. Number one, it's boring, it's bland, it looks like everyone else's resume. A second thing, this objective statement, all right? I'm not applying for marketing positions, I'm not applying for business positions. And so basically, this objective statement is a whole bunch of fluff that I tried to nicely word together that is going to try to impress someone, but my job as an engineer isn't to impress someone with words, it's to impress someone with what I can do. So this objective statement is just doesn't even belong here. Because of course I have interest in these things, or else I wouldn't be giving them my resume. That's about that implied interest. You really don't need this objective statement on your resume. It's just taking up space, is basically what it's doing. I could have something else that's more valuable in that space. Education's pretty good. Languages and technical proficiencies are good. There's a lot there. I'll show you in the next one how bad this looks whenever you actually list it out and how it sets off some red flags for people. One thing that I don't really like here, I have my work experience down towards the bottom. So I had a good bit of work experience, but that should be up at the top because I'm trying to show people that I can, that I'm a good worker or whatever. And then some achievements and software projects, those look good. So then, after the one hackathon, I was talking to a guy from Apple, and he was like, and I don't even really have an interest in Apple, it's not like I was applying there, but he said, I don't even look at resumes that are plain old traditional, and actually a lot of people at that hackathon told me that. So I said, all right, I spent that night, I was like, all right, I'm gonna make this thing look a little bit better. Same content, all the content's the same. You'll see here, this list is pretty long. And, well, it's true that for most of those things, other than 3 over here, if you asked me questions about those, I could answer them pretty in depth about all of them. But the problem is that whenever someone's reading your resume and you have 20 things on there, they're going to either call BS on that and just put your resume away, or they're actually going to call you out on them and ask you about the most obscure thing because they probably actually have some knowledge about it. They're probably going to ask you about the most obscure thing on there and actually see if you're BSing them or not. And if you get to an interview and they ask you something obscure that you weren't counting on, you're done. That's end of interview basically right there. So that sets off a nasty red flag. This 2-column layout that I mentioned, Dr. Briggs does not like the 2-column layout at all. He was very opposed to that.
I've also talked to 2 recruiters and they've all said nope.
Yeah, so they don't like 2-column layouts. So I'm glad, so next one you'll see the next evolution. So good things on here, I got rid of the objective statement and replaced it with just a little, basically this is what this objective statement summed up to. Let me zoom in a little bit.
Well, one quick thing. If what Steve's been saying, you may want to pick up on is he did not just write his resume and send it out. He has had multiple people look it over and he's gone through iterative changes of what works and what doesn't work before he's going to actively send this thing out. So when you write one, don't just write it and don't show it to anybody and get feedback on it. Write it and get feedback on it and find out, does it work, does it not work, so that when you finally send something out, you've got something that has the best chance to get you hired.
And also be careful about who you ask for feedback.
Yeah, I was just going to say, unless Grace Hopper is your grandmother, don't ask Grandma to review your resume. She's not going to give you a good technical description. Now, if your grandmother even knows who Grace Hopper is, she might be qualified. But you really want to get someone who understands the technical jargon in the industry to look over your resume and give you some feedback on it.
Yeah.
Because unless you're it's like I'm not qualified to look over a teacher's resume. I don't know what they're looking for, but I do know about computer scientists' resumes.
Yeah. And actually, no names or anything, but I had someone look at this, you know, professional, and they said, "Oh, this looks great." You know, minor things, rewording of things that we changed around, but you know, the general layout and everything was good. And then when I showed it to Dr. Briggs, immediately this 2-column layout, you know, so I had 2 totally different perspectives, and that's okay because the first perspective told me that the content was good, and the second perspective told me that, you know, the content's good, but maybe this layout needs to be changed and updated, and maybe certain things about the content should be changed, like this massive list of things. So now, and also, oh, this was really weird. So like, this looks great when I send it to you in a PDF because I can do this on the computer. What happens when you go to print this bar at the bottom? You know, let's assume you have a color printer and you go to print this. What happens? You can't print in this margin. So you basically get this bar that like would go across the page but be margined on the side. And so I just had to remove that when I went to make physical copies of this. And so now this whole thing that like sort of brought the resume together, it brought the color of the header together, and it brought, you know, a lot of things together, I thought at least, on the resume. It sort of brought the 2 columns together. I couldn't print that. So that's just garbage. I mean, I can't even print that to give it to someone. I can only send it to them in an email.
Hold on, stay on mute for just a second.
All right.
Are you like full screen in a second?
Full screen. Where's that at?
That's close enough.
That's apparently full screen.
Go scroll up a little bit. All right, so Steve has some, I think, a major organizational flaw. So, what organization should a resume always follow?
Oh yeah, I thought I fixed this on this one here. Yeah.
If you're looking at someone, if you were to read somebody's resume, what do you think about what you see first?
Sound like important, probably.
Yeah, so what you think you're the best at and what is the most important for that company, right? So I think he's probably okay with relevant work experience. But what's wrong with his resume? I think there's something really out of place. Where's his education?
All the way at the end.
So what is Steve inadvertently saying about what he thinks of his education? And I'm not trying to be facetious.
No,
here,
no.
but- I mean, that's what someone's going to look at that, and they're going to say, why is the education buried? He's got a 4.0 and he's burying that? That's weird. Or, they're going to look at that first thing and they're going to say, I don't see education there, he doesn't have a degree, and throw it away. So, it should be, you know, for you, for your first job, education is probably going to be number 1. Even if you haven't graduated yet, it's probably still going to be the most important, because that's what puts you on a level playing field that everyone in the world understands. They understand college degree. If you have, like Steve does, a body of real work, that would maybe come first or second. And then everything else you can pick the order. But it needs to be those 2. It's been a while since I graduated, and my education is still listed first on my CV, because that identifies who I am. It clears up what proficiency I've earned, and then I can talk about my work experience.
Yeah. And just so, we'll talk about this a little bit later, the difference between enterprise and startups. Part of the reason I did that, at least to myself, like my justification for it was, this resume was made for like hackathons and stuff, where it's mainly startup companies. And so my idea there was that the startup companies want to see more about that extracurricular software project and what you've achieved, maybe rather than your education, which maybe comes later. Now, for like an enterprise environment, they don't, I mean, and I'll talk about that, how that's a little bit different. But like, I was definitely, this was like startup focused, which is a little bit different. So, I mean, we'll talk about that, the different focuses that you can have. And now this newest one, which I sent to Dr. Briggs and never got an email from, so hopefully he doesn't rip it apart in front of everyone.
We'll send you out of the room, rip them apart, and then you can come back in.
So, all right, let me go back to one page again, just real quick. Last resume also did not have any margins. See, thank you, Kevin. You couldn't really write stuff here. I guess you could write at the bottom, but I couldn't take a note on something up at the top, in line. I couldn't take a note. So, in this newest, the latest evolution of it, a lot of margin. I got the color aspect that I wanted through that. My personal information is clearly separated from the rest of the resume. which in the last one it was actually sort of integrated in because it was all vertically flowed, but then there wasn't any type of breaking line.
You
Same.
need to benefit to see it.
Yeah. So the content is exactly the same, except you'll notice that that long list, I trimmed a few things down, and then also put it back into the comma format, and so it doesn't look like some overwhelmingly long list that raises red flags. And I made sure that everything I put in there I could talk about pretty in depth, even if it's obscure things. Like if someone had asked me about iOS programming on the other one, I'd probably be screwed. But I had that on there, so I would not want to talk about that in an interview. Raised education up, pass the work experience. For me personally, I still like having the work experience up top because I have had like a job for the past year and a half. Although I could see the point for moving the education up. Skills there. Extracurricular software projects, achievements, student involvement, still all the same. But notice that stuff's there. I think that's really important to set yourself apart is to actually have those things on your resume. And basically, what it's going to be is, so remember I broke it down into a few time frames that you have. So this is the 1 second glance, and I see this and I want to read this. So now I have 8 seconds to pull them in. So I'm showing that I have the experience, I have the education, and I have the skills. All right, and they might get through the top 2 in 8 seconds, and they might be like, all right, I want to read the rest of this. So then quickly I might get another 8 seconds for the rest of the stuff. So it's definitely top heavy in terms of.
You lost your 4.0.
Yeah, that's my only critique.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's huge.
Yeah. I actually didn't even realize I didn't put that on there. I'll put that back in.
Did you lose
Yeah, so I think that I like this resume a lot more. I found this template. So the last one was not templated. The first one was from a template. The last one was not templated. And this one is actually a template from literally Google Drive, templates, resume. So now let's actually go back into the PowerPoint a little bit. So you saw that's the evolution of my resume.
Well, let's go back to the first version.
First version, okay. Should I zoom back out or?
Yeah. First version, keep that in mind. Second version. All right, focus on that. Who likes the second better than the first? Okay, third version. How does that rank? Who likes that better than the second? Who likes that better than the first? So there you go. I don't think anyone else likes the two column format.
Yeah. I still like the two column personally.
What about 1 page versus 2 pages?
Oh yeah. That's a good point. So all those were 1 page. Like I said, you only have a few seconds to capture people's attention. I don't want to read the second page of your resume, and you probably don't have that much, unless you've been doing some really crazy stuff over the past 4 years, you probably don't have 2 pages or more than 1 page of actually valuable material. Hey, Marcus. So you should probably think about things that you can eliminate from your resume that you don't need more than 1 page. But at the same time, you might have
I'm going to contradict you.
Okay.
So I talked to my wife who works in human resources as well as 2 other recruiters, and unanimously they said they want all the important stuff on page 1, but if it's reasonably relevant, they want to see it as well. So because today's applicant pool is different than it was 5 or 10 years ago, the competition for jobs today is a lot more fierce. They want to screen a pile of resumes quickly, and that's that 8 seconds thing. You've got 8 seconds to get that first half of the first page. Has to say you are reasonably qualified to give more consideration to. They might have today 200 or 300 applicants for 1 job, and these recruiters are trying to scan through these things, and then they're going to send a pile of resumes up to a more technical person. That more technical person is going to maybe bring in 10 people, 15 people into interview. Interviewing somebody takes a long time, and so they want to be able to screen out those people and winnow them down very quickly. And so if you have stuff, like go back to anyone up here. So for instance, that skills section, maybe Steve wants to have on the back of that more of an explanation about some of his skills. Maybe he wants to have on the back page and you literally flip it over and find relevant coursework, or you can have additional information that's targeted to that specific app job that you're applying for. Recruiters really, really like that because it gives them reason to call you in because you have stuff that they can look at and say, well, this guy is actually really interesting. He has some connection to what we're trying to do, and look at all this other stuff he's done. Whereas people who just do the one page, if you've left important stuff out because you're trying to make it one page, they don't know that you did anything versus the guy who didn't do anything because you look the same. But the first page, absolutely important, but the myth of a one-page or even a two-page resume today is out the door. And Dr. Gerard knows this too. Like, I think my CV now is like 20 pages.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous, but that's a CV. I think my resume would now be 5 or 6 pages. But I've been doing this stuff for a long time. But my first page is not all that different.
And are those recruiters for enterprises that you were mentioning?
Chambersburg Hospital.
All right, 'cause I did want to mention that is that like, so like I've talked to a lot of startup people, man, and that's where and so that's a totally different story for that. The startups do not. I mean, all the startup people I've talked to, they've said what, like Andreessen Horowitz recruiters and stuff. They're like, I don't want to see more than one page. So like, and so it's that type of target where like the enterprise versus the startup. You can get a lot of.
But startup people are going to be technical at the beginning.
Yeah, at the
Whereas
beginning.
enterprise, they've hired business people to be their
Yeah.
HR people. And to be honest with you, if you go back here a second, I mean, not to cast aspersions at my wife, but if we started saying, ask her the difference between Joomla and SQL, she has no idea. And it's not that she's stupid, it's just that she's not a technical person. They may give a list to their HR people and say, we want to only see resumes that have these 5 words on them, whatever those magic 5 words are. And the HR screeners are going to go through and they're going to highlight or they're going to underline those 5 words, and it goes in one pile, and everybody else goes in another pile. But a technical person is going to want to see more details in it.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good
You
point.
really need to know who's going to be reading their resume.
And those magic words will usually be in the job description. So when you read that job description,
Yeah.
look for those magic words, because if those magic words are nowhere in your resume, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah. That's a good point. GPA, I've heard a lot of questions about this talking to people. Not really needed unless you actually have like the GPA on there that's worth talking about. Please, if you have a bad GPA, do not put it on your resume. Do not be like, oh, I'm gonna be more honest about my GPA. And put it on. No, do not put it on your resume. Like if it's, I would hazard to say like if it's not like honors level GPA, I would not put it on a resume because you could inadvertently like through your honesty whittle yourself into that no look at pool just based on your resume.
Well, but to be honest with you, if you don't put your resume on
It raises
your
some questions.
GPA, they assume it's crappy.
Yeah.
And so if they assume it's crappy, then
It's like it's like a double-edged sword. You have to be careful, but
or better yet, just have a good GPA.
Where is that crappy line at?
Once you start getting below
3.9.
2.5, you're pretty in the crappy category.
Alright.
So then there's the other thing you can do, which is kind of cheating, and that's to say, well, I have a 3.6 in major. All right, well that's fine, right? So we look at your overall GPA as a 2.4, but you have a 3.2 in the computer science course.
that's good. That's
So all right, so you didn't do great in underwater basket weaving, but boy, you knocked the crap out of software engineering classes. That's fine, and then you can advertise it that way.
Yeah, I like that. It's, by saying in major, that's a good idea because obviously you have to have at least a C to have the major. So you might have a better GPA right out of the bat just for having your major.
But if your in major GPA is a 2.1 and your overall is 1.999 rounding up, you're
Having some issues.
yeah.
And that's something you need to target as,
Yeah.
as an underclassman before you, because you have so few, you have time to change things. We already talked about this, multiple resumes.
Graduate school might be for you.
Audience, we got at this a little bit. Understand your audience and how to process your resume. Like Dr. Briggs was saying, you might have people that don't really understand what they're talking about and they just have to look for keywords. You should put those keywords in your resume. If you're applying online, like Monster.com or whatever, you should assume that the people on the other end are either automated or they don't know what they're talking about and they're just going to be looking for keywords, so they're basically automated. It's humans that are just following some type of protocol. So you should assume that if you're applying online and you're not like sending your resume to someone in an email that you actually know is technical, because that's a little bit different. If you're sending it to someone that you know is technical, you you might be able to get away with a little bit more than someone who's just reading blind resumes off of Monster.com. And they will be much pickier probably because they have a lot of people that they're going through. Enterprise. The enterprise world is all about training you. They have the resources to train you, they have the time to train you, and they have the incentive to train you. So you need to show them that you can be taught. So you should have demonstrable skills learned in school from an instructor. So these are things that you were taught by someone who knows what they're doing, because you're going to go into the enterprise world and you're going to be taught things by people who know what they're doing. It's understanding the audience there. You should definitely push, and I think team playing and strong communication skills are critical anywhere, but especially in enterprise, that's going to be really crucial. So you should probably push that in a cover letter or on your resume. Versus say the startup, small, medium business, where they literally do not have the resources to train you with experts in the field, because there might be 10 people on your team, and taking one person out of that team for 3 weeks to train you is going to bring things way down. So having these demonstrable skills that you learned outside of class, maybe on your own or from someone other than an instructor, will be important. Proving that you're driven and that you're a quick learner and that you can learn things is important. And having a strong social and online presence, I think, is definitely important for these small medium business, because you might get people that have a little bit more time than, say, the enterprise world to look into resumes or look into the background of people. And I can tell you for sure that where I work, they look into social presence of things, and they actually take that into account, because it's partly an internet marketing company. So you definitely, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that, some of the social tools that we can use. I'm not talking about Facebook and Twitter. I'm talking about some other, LinkedIn, GitHub, some of these actual valuable social tools. So cover letters. This bridges the gap between a resume and the job requirements. And you only have a few seconds again to capture the attention. So get to the point very quickly and put yourself in that person who's reading your resume shoes. What do they want to see in your cover letter? And give that to them. Don't lie to them. Don't be like, I've done all this stuff that you've never done. It's just because you think that they want to see that. Obviously, the honesty is really important in your whole interview process. And you shouldn't have any typos or misspellings there. So you shouldn't have that, because you will look stupid in your cover letter, and I will see that typo and I will throw it to the side and move on to the next one. So things have spell check. Misspelling should never occur like that in your cover letter, because Word tells you that is not spelled properly, and so does PowerPoint.
The underline in red is not a reward for preventing new words. It really is. The underline in green is not an attaboy for your quality improvement. Fix them. If you ever have me for a course, I always explain this, and then I reward you with an F. So you don't fix those. They're horrible. And we laugh at it. You'd be surprised. Dr. Gerard and I have read cover letters from faculty candidates with typos in them, and have any of them been hired?
Other than Dr. Briggs. Here's a nice buzzword I've made up today. Demonstrable proactiveness. So companies love proactive people, obviously, because proactive people are going to want to learn things. They're going to want to take on more projects.
I think you're number 35.
All right, awesome. Welcome. You just earned that pie in my face.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Awesome. Can I throw it?
Nope. That's random. All right. So be proactive also in how you handle your interactions. And this has happened to me. I'm still going through this right now. And actually, I don't know if I will talk to this company again. I talked on the phone screen. I won their award at a hackathon. Out of the 250 teams that I won their award, or they're a consultant for the company that I won the award from. I had a great time talking to their team. Their team wanted me to interview and stuff. And so I called the recruiter, and we're talking on the phone, a great phone conversation. She wants to talk to me. They're in New York City. She was looking at maybe the availability of having me come in. That was a month and a half ago. And she said, I will call you on Thursday or Friday. So then Tuesday came around, still with no call, so I just sent her a little email, being a little bit proactive about it. Hey, just checking in with everything I can do. I'll call you tomorrow, or I'll let you know tomorrow. A week later, still nothing. So I sent another email, hey, is everything going good, you know? Or maybe that was like 2 weeks later, just, you know, I wanted to give her some time, just, you know, being understanding. Hey, I'm having a meeting with my team today. I promise that I will call you tomorrow. I promise that I will call you tomorrow. That was 2 weeks ago, and I still have not received a phone call, despite the fact that on the phone, she wanted me to come in for an interview for sure. And so that is not a proactive approach on her end, and it gives me a bad impression of the company in general. So imagine if you're bad at being proactive about things, how people are going to take that impression about how you operate. She could be a great recruiter and a great person. Maybe she's really busy. Maybe she's like, you know, going through some stuff in her life and she's just like really busy. Maybe she got fired. I don't know. But, you know, I on my end, I don't have that. I just have the fact that I promise I'll call you tomorrow, and that was 2 weeks ago. So don't ever do that to a recruiter because you probably won't ever get an email back after you make that phone call or that email. I saw this in a book somewhere. I think it was a program and team book. No one is going to handle your career for you. You do not have, you know, it's nice professors are here, they can talk to you about things, they can talk to you about a career path and all that, but they won't get you a job. The only person who's going to get you a job is yourself. And you need to have these skills, and you need to be proactive and take this initiative to get yourself a job. Because everyone here wants jobs, I hope. So you have to be in charge of your own career. You have to handle that yourself. And you also want to be proactive as early as possible, because the earlier that you're being proactive about things, the sooner you're going to be able to self-correct when something is wrong. Because things will go wrong, and you will want to fix that as soon as you can. Getting into some social tools. GitHub is definitely important. If you're a senior and you don't have a GitHub, and I don't think it's as important for like enterprise. I would say though that small, medium startup, you won't get into a startup without a GitHub, and you might have a hard time getting into a small, medium business. But definitely code samples, because GitHub is basically a place you can put your code samples that are actually decent. Let's say you're using a tool and you notice a bug. Report it on GitHub. Just the fact that you reported the bug to that project on GitHub shows that you contributed to that project. Maybe you can take it to the step further and actually fix the bug, test it, and get it put back into the main library. GitHub makes that possible these days. You can go from randomly using the library one day, you notice something, you fix it, you push it, you ask for them to check it out and integrate your fix back into their product, and then it's fixed. And that's a really cool thing. And so I suggest that you get a GitHub if you don't have one. And maybe you won't use it for a little while, but one day you will use it because a lot of projects are moving from like Google Code over to GitHub. And you should be active on it. Yeah, Nick?
I'm just going to say, what would you consider the scale of Deloitte? Would that be
Wait, the what?
Deloitte?
Their enterprise.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
yesterday I had an interview, and all three people who were interviewing me, they loved the fact that I had GitHub as well as projects of my own from my GitHub listed on my resume.
Yeah.
So all scales are definitely
Yeah.
considered GitHub.
All right, yeah, I can definitely see it. I can definitely understand that.
So do you guys know why that's a big deal? So, especially with the computer engineering program, I call it the Penn State effect. You can graduate from some of our esteemed competition, who I think I just named, but I won't probably shame. And you'll never have written any major piece of code. But you can actually graduate in computer science and not be able to program.
This is a fact, by the way. I've done a lot with Penn State. Obviously, I have my.
I didn't say Penn State.
Oh, sorry. I've done a lot with Penn State.
Wait, I had tenure. Yeah, it was Penn State.
Yeah. I go to hackathons with Penn State. I'm going to Yale tomorrow with Penn State for a hackathon. I don't think I've ever seen a CS major from Penn State. It's always the entrepreneurial kids. People that don't really program, but they actually have this initiative to do something and to get this like movement going on in their school. And that's a really cool thing. And we should be doing that type of stuff because the entrepreneur kids are great. They have this like drive to do things. That's like in their blood. But we have the technical knowledge. And I know that people are passionate about what we do. And like having a GitHub and being proactive and all that shows that they have that passion. And it puts you in that entrepreneurial level almost. So, you know, even as a CS student, you can still have that drive to do things and to sort of, you know, organize in like an entrepreneurial fashion. Yeah, it's sort of odd. All these Penn State's people I go with, they're non-CS majors that want to learn how to program, and they're going organizing $80,000 events to host hackathons. So it's pretty crazy. Hackathons. I cannot recommend this enough. In the past year, the number of hackathons has gone like this. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, there's literally a hackathon every weekend on the East Coast somewhere. There was like 6 in a row at major schools, and they will pay for your transportation. They will. I'm taking a bus from Penn State to go, so I have to pay for my gas at Penn State, which I could probably get reimbursed. They will pay you to go to their hackathon, to talk to their companies, to build something with their product, and you will get reimbursed for that. You're giving up time and whatever, like you have to do your homework some other time. But the things you're getting from that, you're gonna have a code sample from that. That might not be the most quality because you're writing it with like caffeine-driven intensity, but you will have some type of code sample from that, some type of thing that runs, and you can show someone that you built something. And you might have just been like a person on this like 4-person project that you didn't really contribute a whole lot, but you have this like project that you can show for, which is really cool. And tons of resume exchange opportunities. Like you probably exchange with like 20 companies at these hackathons. Tons of networking opportunities. Like, you know, I've met a lot of people at hackathons. I can, you know, feel pretty comfortable. I need to like call them up to see if they have jobs in their area or whatever. Like, these are some of the most important things right now. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look up Hack PSU. It's in the spring. Just look up hackathons, Hacker League. Get involved in this because it's like this isn't a joke. It's like an actual movement that's happening, and it's actually legit because companies love the people that go to hackathons because it is the proactive people. It's the people that just by going to the hackathon, they know they're going to meet a lot of smart people, and they're probably only going to meet smart people. So go to them, and it's super awesome, and they're a lot of fun. I can't recommend it enough, and you'll gain things from it. You'll meet people, and you'll learn new things, which is really awesome. LinkedIn, it's just good for networking and all that. You know, you meet someone, add them on LinkedIn. You're essentially going to be entering your resume into LinkedIn, and you can actually have it be as long as you want to. You can get endorsed for your skills on LinkedIn, which is really cool. So it's not just skills anymore; it's actually peers and people that you work with and bosses that are endorsing you for those skills, hopefully. And so that's really cool about LinkedIn. I've had like recruiters, I don't really like recruiters, but they target people on LinkedIn. If you're like really pressed for a job, you'll probably get contacted by recruiters at some point if you have the right network. So definitely, you know, have a LinkedIn, make sure it reflects your current state of things. Have it updated. They tell you all these little steps you have to go through on the side to make a strong profile. Do all of those. Put a picture up that's, you know, professional and entering your information and, you know, add your friends and try to get people to endorse you for your skills. It's really important. So, yeah. All right. So, this whole talk is, it's about resumes, but it's also about building something, building yourself, building your department, building your peers. The only reason I'm hosting this event is because I want to help all of you do something and to be better and to, you know, maybe inspire someone to do something next year or next semester. So like, I feel like I've learned a lot from this event. I feel like the department's benefited from it, and hopefully all of you have taken something away from it. Now imagine that everyone in here, sometime in the next 4 years, just did something like that. Like organize some event. You don't need you need a professor's blessing because you need the room. But you don't need professors to hold your hand while you organize these events. Like, obviously you should use them as source of info, but as a student, you have the power to organize these events. You have the power to contact companies and to ask them to come to your campus and to talk to the students and to get the students to come to that. And you have the power to do that. And so I hope that sometimes, if you're a freshman or sophomore or junior, sometimes before the end of your graduation, you'll take some type of step to do something for the department to make it better. Because the difference between somewhere like Penn State and somewhere like SHIP is the fact that Penn State has a lot of students, they have a lot of money to throw at things, so they can just host these events like willy-nilly. And it's difficult at Penn State. It's not like there's not like funding that I can just pull magic money out of and host an event like this. It's difficult, but if people are actually interested and want to attend each other's events and actually create this like community and shit, I think it'd be a lot better. It's sort of one of the places that we lack in, and I think that people are just busy and stuff like that's really cool. But I think that it could be improved on, and it's not going to be improved on by professors because it's not an area that professors should be improving in. It should be the students that are leading that initiative. It shouldn't be the professors that have to get someone to come in and talk to everyone. It should be the students that want that and ask that to happen. And maybe they need to go through a professor to make that happen, but having that initiative will just help everyone. So be proactive, organize events, join clubs, lead clubs, and just be passionate about computer science. And your resume will build itself. If you do these things up here on this board, I think you'll find by the time you graduate that you have a strong resume. Just inherently, like you're going to have a strong resume. So I hope that you'll do that. So that's the end of my spiel. If you have questions or whatever, like people can ask questions about, but please ask any questions that you have. If you want to know about some of my experience or whatever, you can ask me about that. One of the things that Dr. Briggs suggested, and I didn't get the email out on time, was to pick a job description that you're interested in. Just go to Craigslist or whatever and look for jobs in the area that look interesting. And try to craft a resume around that job. Maybe not applying to the job, but just crafting your resume around that job and get that experience. Or just make a general resume, that's really cool too. But having a goal to work for will help you. Ask people around you, ask professors, people around you can look at it and say, oh, that looks good, that doesn't look good. So then, ask each other things. And I'll be around to help if you have any questions. So that's all I have, and hopefully, what's up, Chris?
How far into these hackathon events, or how far in advance do you have to sign up to be a part of it?
I confirmed for Y-Hacks a week ago, I think. But they knew I already had interest. So I would say typically 4 weeks is probably pretty good. The good thing for me is, so I went to Hack PSU all by myself. I was on a team by myself. I made some crappy project in 24 hours. And it totally sucked because it boiled down to a minute presentation. I totally screwed up. So it was a pretty miserable experience. But I got this connection with InnoBlue at Penn State. And so InnoBlue basically knows, I'm in their Facebook group, and they post something. Hey, who wants to come on the bus with us to Michigan Hacks or Y-Hacks or Rutgers Hacks? I'm like, yeah, I want to go to that. And they're like, all right, cool, sign this sheet, and then you're good to go. So getting that connection with Penn State is really good. I've been really fortunate to have that connection with Penn State because they have a great entrepreneurial leaders up there that are doing things. Juniors in school, there's literally a junior, so you can do things as a junior. You don't have to be a senior. There's a junior that leads the entrepreneurial stuff at Penn State. He is getting people from the Bay Area to come in and talk. He's doing $80,000 hackathons, getting sponsorship from companies and stuff as a junior. You don't need to be a senior to be a leader in this type of thing, so you can totally do it by yourself. But that's a little bit more than what you asked. But yeah, typically I think Hacker League is pretty good for showing you when stuff is, or you can see, oh, hey, there's gonna be a hackathon in New York City coming up in a month or two, and you can go and sign up that way. I typically say a month in advance would probably be pretty good. And there's definitely ones in the spring. There'll probably be even more in the spring than there were this fall. There were a lot this fall. So I think I've been to 3 this fall. Any other questions for everyone?
When you added all the different skills or languages, how familiar with one would you be to put it on?
Let me just pull that up.
You put it on there, and I'm going to ask you about it.
Yeah, so let's see this one. All right, so I took the AI class. You might not be able to read that. It's sort of small, but it's sort of a pain to zoom in on. I had Lisp on there. I did pretty well on that in the AI class, but I do not want to do an interview question in Lisp.
So the other question that you have to ask yourself is, do you want to be the Lisp programmer in your company? Nope.
Let me see the new one.
So, if it's not part of the job you're applying for, and you're possibly going to get quizzed on it, watch out for. Like he puts on SQL on there, and in an interview question, if I was a technical person, I see all that list of stuff on there. I think I've met Mr. Know-It-All. I'll ask you a question like, what's the difference between left join and intersection?
I've had that type of stuff on, I think pretty much all of the interviews I've talked about. There's definitely been SQL stuff where you have to know the difference between like your joins in order to actually be able to successfully complete the question. And the interviewer knows exactly what they're talking about. So if you don't say it right, you know, you're going to show that you don't actually have that level of knowledge and you know what you're talking about.
So for example, like taking comp work and OS, like was that like enough for C, or would you say like that's you should know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Like in the computer engineering thing, they're going to want a few extra things, but then we go over those in microcontrollers. I actually had a student come back a few years ago. He came back from a job interview, and he said, "I just got a job." I'm like, "Great." He said, "It's all because of you." I'm like, "No, I don't think so." He said, "Yeah, because they asked what an opcode was on the MIPS assembler." Like, for real? And he's like, "Yeah," and I knew it. I was like, "That's so cool." Okay. So whatever random question, you'll be surprised what they can ask.
I don't have MIPS on there, you'll notice on the languages. I probably am going to remove C from there because a lot of stuff I'm doing is web development. And I don't want to be the C guy in the company because I'd rather just like claw my eyes out. Sorry. I don't want to be the C guy.
Okay, I wouldn't put PHP anywhere near it.
I know you would. That's okay though.
Rhoda.
You're still on like PHP 4.8 though, so it's okay. Yeah, so I mean that's a really good point. Do you want to be that person at the job? Is a really good thing to take away from that.
And the other thing you have to watch out for is if you're applying for a position and they're looking for entry level, and you make yourself look like you're looking for a senior position, you're going to think, well, there's no way we're going to hire this guy. And so, to be honest with you, I don't know if you said this straight out. I'm a very firm believer in you have many resumes. In fact, the most successful way I've ever done a job search was you write a resume for each job you really, really want. So you go to Monster.com, you say, I want that job, I look at those references, or what their skills are looking for, and I look at what skills I bring, and I retailer my resume to meet what they're looking for. And so you have 4 or 5 resumes, like I said, and then you start from those, and you make a custom one, and you submit them. Is it a lot of work? Absolutely. Well, welcome to life. But it makes a big difference. Great.
In a lot of interviews, I've been getting questions about, like, they'll ask you on a scale of 1 to 5 what your proficiency is for like each language that you list. And I'm wondering, is there some like universal standard as to, you know, where?
No, it's all subjective. So, and I'll also throw this out. Technical people in general suck at doing this one thing, and that is selling yourself. You don't want to be all fives, right? You don't want to go in and say, look, I'm buds with Bernard Strustrup, and I'm the master of Zen, master of C++, right? That's overselling yourself, but by the same token, you've got to sell yourself. And so you also have to remember, you might be average compared to other ship students, but like I said, you know, the Penn State people I've run into, they couldn't program in Java, even though they've had Java classes. They don't know what Make is. They think it's a magazine, if they're lucky. So, you know, your skills compared to your peers might be one thing. You have to look at your skills compared to other people who are applying for that position.
Any other questions?
There's one thing you didn't put on there.
What's that?
Thank you letters.
Thank you.
If you have ever called for an interview, always, for the love of God, always write a thank you letter within 24 hours of having your interview. My wife, being in HR, had decided not to hire somebody because they did not submit a thank you letter. So they got in for an interview, they liked the person. There were 3 people that they brought in, they liked 2 of them. The person who wrote the thank you letter was hired simply because it showed that they had followed through. So someone lost a job because they were just lazy about that.
So just a simple email following up, or
You could do an email if it's more of an informal interview. If you're applying at IBM, no, it's a letter. Or Deloitte, you know, these big enterprises, they're still old school paper, send it in. Oh, if you're going to send a paper resume, spend the money and go to Staples and buy nice resume paper. Don't buy like crap out of our photocopier, right? That's not going to impress anybody. Something that has tactile feel, so that you're going through a stack of resume paper, you feel it, you want to hold it because it feels so nice. And then make sure that your thank you letter is printed on the same paper that your resume was on, because it all goes together. And if you have nice resume paper and crappy thank you letter paper like one, be consistent. You are marketing yourself. You are advertising yourself. You're selling yourself. And you've got to be as careful about how you sell yourself as Chrysler is about hot Jeeps. As much as I like my Jeep, it was a piece of crap car. It really was. It was not engineered well at all. I burned through tires in 10,000 miles. I burned through 5 factory recalls in 15,000 miles. It was a crappy car. But Chrysler knew how to market it. And that's what you've got to be able to do. As a technical person, you have to rise above that I'm not worthy kind of attitude that is so prevalent among technical people, and market yourself. Or you're not going to get a job.
Any other questions?
Last one I'll throw out there, sorry. References. Make sure you arrange your references ahead of time so that if you do get called for an interview, you can bring your references with you in case they ask for them, and they often will. And for the love of God, think about who you're going to use as a reference. I had, honest to God, we had a student who I failed in Comp Board not once, but twice, and nailed for academic dishonesty, and he chose me as a reference. I mean, what are you going to do with that? So I'm on the phone with this guy, and he's like, so-and-so used you as a reference. I'm like, okay. Do you remember the student? Oh, yeah, I remember the student really, really well. Would you give him a reference? Well, what is he applying for? He's going to be a level 1 help desk support person. I said, oh, so he's like the guy who's going to answer the phone when someone calls? Yeah. And I said, yeah, this person would be great, because he could walk in the room and calm everybody down with his kind of inner peace, and nothing ever seemed to get him bothered, like cheating. I didn't have the cheating part. So, yeah, that was okay. But, I mean, seriously, pick someone who's going to not hedge when they give you a reference. That's the kiss of death. I mean, when I got to give a reference to somebody, I'm like, yep, they came to class. We all know what that means, right? They were as bare minimum as possible, and they were not going to find somebody, don't use grandma. Pick on my grandma today. Don't use grandma. Find somebody who's professional, who's in your discipline, to serve as a reference.
Grandma went into the front fast enough, though.
Yeah. Was that an app that keeps popping up with like?
Yeah, my work uses this thing called Mango. It's like an internal social networking type of thing. I actually like it a lot, but people like to use it at my work.
I was just gonna say, I keep seeing all these like positive apps.
It's all positive. Everything. Thanks.
Like, wow, that'd be a great app to rate. Just something that pop up and say nice things about you, as if they were random people on the internet. Thanks, you're awesome. You're good looking too. I mean, just random pop ups.
I think the pie is deserving, but if you're gonna leave and you were promised extra credit, actually, even if you weren't promised extra credit, just so in case that would happen, just put your name down, and then like to the left of your name, put like a star or something if your professor told you that you were getting extra credit. That way, when the professor looks at the list, they can say who's getting extra credit and were they here. And just sign that on this paper. Everyone has to get their name on here, so don't do that. So, you want to work on the resumes, or are you not doing that?
I'm waiting for pie.
Well, we can do it outside. I'm not cleaning up.
About to record it.
I am.
I've been on edge this entire time. I was ready to catch it at the end of the thing, but
I know what I do.
it's only sealed because these things are rubber. That's why I say
I'm going to get the pie. And sign your name on that list. You remember you get to select who gets the pie meat. Only one person gets the pie meat.
But then you have gift cards.
No, because it was going to
What about it?
Well, right now, how much detail? It's telling me to use tessellation. So I'm going through there. Error when I do my callback. It's saying that's this person as a callback.
Are you still working to see it?
Yeah. I have to. Well, it's when you yell.
I'm pretty sure I do my callback completely wrong. But it never, I never, it's never.
What do you do? Do you like run out?
I don't know what I do. What am I doing worse?
Alright, I'll have to look it up.
Why are you getting there?
It says that it doesn't recognize like what the function is. It's like GLU, tessellation, tessellation. You have to set the tessellation object to have and test the mode or what the callback function is. Those are like GL tessellation, tessellation, and it has to register the callback function. So you put the name in there. I tried putting just the name in there, and it says that it's recognized as a function. Or and then I tried putting it in.
When you look up like
Oh, I looked it up. 350. Use Google.
Our book's not too bad.
I know, that's why I looked at it.
we just go to Google and type in how do I draw a non-contact
I did that, and it told me tessellation. It was more confusing on there than it's like, well,
copy paste. That's what you do, and then you just modify it to get what you need. That's why I write all the stuff. Copy paste and then fix it.
Yeah. Well, there wasn't a Forge back then.
Yeah.
Like, it was just
Especially OpenGL.
oh, you'd like
I couldn't put it in my schedule. It's so much better. Credits. I'll probably take it eventually. Is this still recording?
because
Steve, I'm leaving you a cute message.
No, I couldn't gibberish.
Chris loves you.
I do.
I'm not going to go into it here.
well, then that's only half the
We have to make sure. No, we have to make sure they delete the video.
Dude, Steve, oh my gosh. That is,
Steve, what the fuck?
it was literally like half on the table.
Like if you guys like touched the table, it would have fell
It was
off.
gone. It was going off.
Like not if you bumped it, if you touched it.
I hope you're that camera, like the leg was like half on the table, half off. Yeah, I'm so glad you like actually.
How should I think? Did everyone here sign this paper? If you want to pie me, sign the paper. If you want to have the chance to pie me, please sign the paper right now. I don't have the chance to pie me.
Griggs enjoys watching people. He enjoys making things. It's a different kind of.
Are those used for?
All right. Alex Bretts? Is there an Alex Bretts out here? Is there an Alex Bretts out here? Alex Bretts represents No, you can't hurt me. Alright, pie's going on right now. Let's go.
It's kind of like what you said.
That was perfect.
Oh yeah, it's no, it's like this except it's all there's like
It's all touch.
It's all solid, yeah, and it's all it's like a touch screen, and because you can click too. So like if you want to scroll, you can just touch the. It's kind of like a.
Oh, there's an app that you can use like your phone.
Oh,
or
you
whatever.
can use it as a mouse.
Yeah.
Oh, that's.
Yeah, you did. Don't worry, people got video.
Okay.
The next random person on the list.
When you're having a bad day, just watch Steve get behind the
Actually. Oh, wow.
He's like,
You need an action shot of that?
Okay. It's some money for the last 5 seconds.
Was Stephen Holmes recording? Oh man, when he flinched too, we should I didn't realize he wore the thing as a yarmulke.
All in the scene.
just the entire department.
We pretty much
Send it out in a department-wide email like you're ranting about no food in the plant. This is what happens when food goes out.
Anyway, I just had a Joe.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
pretty much the same email as the email about this was the because I think they said it was an email.
Gold thrown at me.
Some person. Well, they're free to
Jane Burke, sad boy. I mean, every company is, especially a big company.
Hey, do I have your consent to put this on Facebook? I don't care.
Too bad it's already there.
I don't know. When people are like go for more than
The man of Steve.
5 years. How do you This is probably gonna be like my first. There's no way I want to do this.
Yeah. Well, I highly doubt
This
it.
is what happens when everyone
Be there for it.
But I do it's a good amount of time.
Yeah, and like all 3 interviews are like 8 years plus.
Yeah. I mean, but they all were at different places before that, so.
right?
Today, right?
Yeah, but I think still, if you do all the other labs and do everything else, doesn't matter what grade you get on the other two classes, you're gonna pass the course. Really all the- Yeah. That was well worth the hour or something.
It was a really good power.
Yeah, yeah.
It's all things learning. You ready for it now? Thanks for coming. So, what do I get from
Do you want that, Chris? And then,
I get
I want to work on the resume.
Speaking of which, dude, yeah, could you look over one?
Yeah, dude. What do you think of that presentation?
I thought it was good. It covered a lot of things, and you also ended up making me feel bad. I didn't have any of the contact information for any of the guys who interviewed me at Deloitte, so I couldn't send a thank you letter.
Yeah, it's a little bit different for that. You'll get a different interview.
Oh yeah. All 4 of like different resumes that say involved. So here's my hands one.
Oh man, too dense.
Yeah. See, that was my problem with pretty much all of them. Just so dense. That one, the formatting just looks like shit. I mean, what's with the huge bullets?
Yeah. I don't like that dogs. See, I wouldn't put stuff that you were showing in class on there. Like the contracts and the belts or something.
Except I extended that for well over 3 months after the class and had it on GitHub. And then took
I
it
put
to too many
achievements at the
games.
bottom.
Yeah. And those are my new ones. That one being the old one, I stopped using that because it's way dense.
Yeah, too much dense. That's just like you might want to read it.
Yeah. So if anything, it's that one right there. I did recently.
I'd see, I don't like the profile.
Yeah.
So I would get rid of classes. I'd get rid of academics. There's just too much. Like all these, that's just too much. I'd make this wider. I'd get rid of this 2 column here. Do 1 and have it going across.
Yeah, I was thinking if I get rid of that, I could have this stuff in a single column, keep these there, and then have this area for like people. Right?
Yeah. I think it'd be weird to have like 1 to 2 column and stuff.
Yeah. Should I take the references section off of the resume? So that should be like a separate thing.
Yeah, I don't even put references on there.
Because that's always like one of the things that made me have to squeeze stuff on. It's like, oh, I have references.
Yeah. I'd get rid of the hobbies and work that into somehow into other places. You should be prepared to answer questions about all this.
I am.
I know you're new to
I
it.
took out other things that were in it before. Like I used to have cube and stuff in there. It's just I took them out.
I think it was development environments. I feel like that's not really necessary.
It is when like people ask you, hey, since you know a little bit of C#, have you worked with Visual Studio? And I'm like,
Whoa.
no, I haven't. I use Mach.
Well, see, but I don't think I would even put that on there. That's just like one name, more than anything. So I don't like that you put Java and C# on the same line.
It's because when people end up looking for like C#, if
Yeah,
you know Java,
but-
it tends to be good enough.
Yeah, I still wouldn't put them together, personally.
It's because there's just so many similarities. And when
Yeah, but they're.
when someone asks for
it just
one,
looks
they
sort
don't
of.
like something better.
This looks a little bit odd. Yeah, see, like the differences in columns sort of messes things up because you have 2, 2, 3, 3, 1 going across, so it makes it just look sort of like not together properly or something like that. I personally, I don't really like having I think 2 columns would be okay if you were like consistently 2 columns, but like it just looks, I don't know, it makes it look really dense that way. Like it just looks like really dense to me. Like from really far back.
Yeah.
And like you have design sense though, but like I don't really see design sense too much down here.
Yeah.
Like you have the logo up here, which is good, but having the design sense in the rest of it, because I know you can design things better than this.
Mm-hmm.
I think the problem is maybe you just think you need to have too much on there, and that it leaves you not much space to work with. So, like, I'd get rid of like attended too many games, presented 3 projects. I'd just put president for 2-3 years. I mean, that's just gonna say things about that. Programming competitions, I would only put them. I would put, several national competitions, bird competitions. If you place well in them, putting that there. But only put like, I like all my programming competitions. It literally comes down to like one thing, like, one first place in several programming competitions. Like, I don't need to explain anything more really. So like that'll take up, that'll just like let you put those things together. Moving the development environments, I don't think that's necessary. I think it just pivots more than anything. Because it's showing like these like obscure things other than Eclipse and Unity. These like obscure things that, I don't know.
So it tackles all kind of jobs. Like if I'm going for something at like a startup indie game studio, it's like, oh, you know Unity 3D. Or if I go and
See,
do
I would
something
say
and
Unity
people are like,
3D, wouldn't that more like an API though, or a framework, I mean?
Unity 3D is the it's
It's
a
like the
game
framework.
engine.
Yeah, but so it's like the framework, because you're.
It's a full engine with IE and everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just have some room here to lose a lot of stuff like these classes and academics. I would just lose that, and I put, education.
I might keep like the academics. I'll just say B in software engineering and 3.23.
I wouldn't even put your GPA in
A lot of employers want me to have at least a 3. So
Alright.
having a little bit over a 3 looks
there. No, other than that, I mean, it looks pretty good. I think the hobbies thing's a little bit weird. It's just like you're like changing. You're not consistent in the styling. And so like for instance, at least this one, it looks more consistent, although it's really dense. This one looks consistent in a bad way because it's just like that looks bad.
Yeah,
It shouldn't look like an outline.
No, that ended up coming from when I downloaded from Google Docs. It messed with some of the formalizing.
And like, I assume this is probably what it used to look like.
Yeah.
So like, if I put this bit over here, just for visual aesthetics, I think the top definitely looks better over here.
Yeah.
And high school on this side? Did you know Jordan in high school?
Yeah, because of my brother as well as interacting with him on Facebook and doing that. Yeah. No, this was after my first semester. I updated it, but it's still the same format that I had right out of high school.
Yeah, I think you could clean things up, make things look more consistent in that.
Yeah.
And that'll serve you really. It looks sort of weird because you have this open space and it breaks
Uh-huh.
down into.
Yeah.
Cool. I need to take a shower.
Oops, too filthy last night.
Yeah.
I'm surprised Andrew didn't come for this.
Yeah, he was working, I think, today.
Yeah. He works Tuesdays and Thursdays, right?
Yeah.
See you later,
See you,
Steve.
man.